At the train station, I thought I was starting a quiet trip to my late wife's hometown, just flowers, memories, and a few peaceful days alone. My daughter-in-law handed me a cup of coffee and smiled. "Drink it, Dad. It's a long journey." She waited until I finished every drop. Minutes after boarding, the world tilted. My hands trembled. My legs failed. I collapsed in the aisle as the train pulled away. Through the blur, a stranger knelt beside me. "You've been poisoned," she whispered. When I woke up, I understood the truth. Someone wanted me gone. So I decided to disappear on my own terms. Thank you for being here. It truly means a lot. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these journeys reach. A quick note. Some elements have been shaped for storytelling and reflection. Any similarities are unintentional, but the message behind this story is meant to leave an impact. Thank you for listening. That October morning in 2024, I woke with a heaviness I couldn't explain. It wasn't pain, not exactly. It was a pressure behind my ribs, a quiet warning that settled into my chest, like a stone dropped into deep water. The autumn sun streamed through the bedroom curtains, in thin golden lines, dust drifting lazily in its light. But the warmth didn't reach me. By noon, I would understand that feeling. By noon, it would be too late to undo anything. I had been planning the trip for weeks, my first journey back to Angela's hometown, since she passed 4 years earlier. 4 years. It still sounded impossible. The thought of walking those familiar streets without her felt like reopening a wound that had only just begun to scar. But I had promised myself I would go. Angela would have wanted it. She would have insisted I visit her mother's grave, lay fresh flowers, and sit on that old iron bench beneath the maple tree where she used to read as a child. So I bought the ticket. I packed my small leather suitcase, and I avoided looking at the empty side of the bed too long. The house felt unnaturally quiet that morning. Not peaceful quiet. There's a difference. Peace hums softly. This felt hollow. I moved slowly through the hallway, my joints stiff from the October chill that crept through the old walls overnight. 72 years makes mornings less forgiving. I built this house with Angela in the early 90s, back when I was still running the telecom company, and she was teaching 3rd grade. Every room carried her. Her laugh seemed to linger in the kitchen tiles. Her reading glasses still rested in the top drawer of the nightstand. The garden out back, full of roses she planted herself, remained untouched, because I could not bring myself to rearrange something she loved. I was in the bedroom double-checking my suitcase when I heard the front door open downstairs. My first instinct was Everett. He had a key. But Everett was supposed to be in Chicago on business. He had told me that just 2 days earlier. Ambrose Ilara's voice floated up the staircase. "Are you ready? I thought I'd drive you to the station." I froze, one hand on the zipper of my suitcase. Ilara. In 7 years of marriage to my son, she had never once offered to drive me anywhere. We were cordial, polite at holidays, civil at dinner. But warmth had never existed between us. She found me old-fashioned. I found her guarded. There was always something in her eyes that didn't match the curve of her smile. "That's very kind of you," I called down, keeping my tone neutral. "But I was planning to take my own car." "Don't be silly." Her footsteps climbed the stairs, light, quick, confident. "You shouldn't leave your car at the station for a week. I'm happy to drop you off." She appeared in the doorway dressed in a charcoal blazer and fitted dark jeans, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. At 38, she carried herself with sharp precision. That morning, she wore what I'd come to recognize as her professional smile, the kind that showed teeth but never quite touched her eyes. "Everett's in Chicago," she continued smoothly. "So I'm alone in the house anyway. Might as well make myself useful." There it was again, that weight in my chest. Something subtle but insistent. She stood slightly angled in the doorway, blocking part of the exit. Her gaze flicked briefly to my suitcase, then to the nightstand where my phone and wallet rested. Well, I said after a pause, if you insist. I do. She stepped forward and lifted the suitcase before I could reach for it. We should leave soon. You don't want to miss your train. The drive to Riverside Station normally took 20 minutes. Ilara stretched it into 30, taking unfamiliar side streets, chatting lightly as if following a script. She spoke about Everett's meetings in Chicago, about some marketing project she was managing, about how quickly the weather was turning cold. I watched the city roll past the old theater where Angela and I had our first date, the park where Everett learned to ride a bike, the bakery that once made Angela's favorite lemon cake, and tried to silence the feeling that something was off. You must be looking forward to the trip, Ilara said, glancing at me through the rearview mirror. Getting away for a while. It's not exactly a vacation, I replied. Angela's hometown. Visiting graves. Oh, a pause. Still a change of scenery helps. Clears your head. In the mirror, her face looked neutral, almost bland. But her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles pale. We reached Riverside Station just after 10:30. She insisted on carrying my suitcase inside. The station buzzed with late-morning energy business travelers, pacing students, adjusting backpacks, elderly couples leaning on one another. Announcements echoed against the high ceilings. The smell of coffee drifted from the cafe near the ticket counters. "Let me buy you a coffee," Ilara said suddenly. "It's a long ride." "I'm fine," I insist. Her hand lightly gripped my elbow, guiding me toward the cafe. I stood beside her in line, watching baristas steam milk and call out names. That's when I caught her reflection in the glass display case. For a fleeting second, the smile disappeared. Her expression sharpened, focused, calculating. Then she noticed me looking, and the smile returned instantly. "2 lattes," she told the barista. Then to me, "You still take it with just a little sugar, right?" I nodded, though I couldn't remember ever telling her that. She paid and handed me a cup. It felt warm. The aroma was familiar. For 40 years, Angela had made my coffee every morning. This should have felt comforting. It didn't. "Drink up," Ilara said cheerfully. "You'll need the energy." I took a sip. The flavor was wrong. Not dramatically, just off. Slightly more bitter. A faint metallic aftertaste. "Is it okay?" she asked, watching me closely. "It's fine," I said. "Finish it," she urged gently. "Your train leaves soon." There was something beneath her tone, an insistence that pressed against my instincts. But I was raised to accept kindness without suspicion. So I drank. I emptied the cup, while she observed, nodding with quiet satisfaction. "Good," she murmured. "That's good." We walked to track 5. The train gleamed under the autumn sun. Ilara carried my suitcase the final steps. "Have a safe trip, Ambrose," she said, leaning close. Her perfume was sharp and floral. A very safe trip. There was something in the way she said it too deliberate. I climbed aboard. Found my seat 17B, sat down. Through the window, I saw her wave briefly before turning away. The train began to move. At first, everything felt normal. Then my mouth went dry. My fingers tingled. A slow numbness crept into my hands. The sunlight streaming through the windows seemed painfully bright. The edges of my vision shimmered. I tried to stand. My legs refused. I tried to call for help. My voice barely formed. The aisle tilted sideways. My heart pounded unevenly. A cold sweat broke across my forehead. Passengers' voices blurred together. The overhead lights flared white. My hands slipped from the armrest, and then I was falling. The last thing I remember before the darkness closed in was the distant echo of someone shouting, and the unmistakable realization settling into my mind like a final verdict. Something was very, very wrong. 15 minutes after the train pulled away from Riverside Station, my fingers stopped belonging to me. It began as a faint prickling, the harmless kind you get when you've slept on your arm too long. A mild inconvenience, easy to ignore. But within seconds, the sensation sharpened, spreading from my fingertips to my palms. then racing up my wrists and forearms like ice water injected straight into my veins. The rhythm of the train, steady, mechanical, reassuring, suddenly felt unstable. The car tilted and swayed as though the tracks had become uneven, as though gravity itself had shifted. I tightened my grip on the armrest. My knuckles turned white, but I couldn't feel the pressure. I couldn't feel the textured vinyl beneath my fingers. It was like trying to hold on with someone else's hands. The metallic taste hit next. It coated my tongue thick and bitter, like I'd been sucking on old pennies. I tried to swallow, but my throat felt swollen, constricted, as if invisible fingers were tightening around my windpipe. My heart slammed against my ribs, hard, irregular, frantic, out of rhythm with the steady clack of the train wheels below. Thump. Pause. Thump, thump. Wrong. Everything about it was wrong. The fluorescent lights overhead seemed brighter than they had a moment ago, flickering at the edges of my vision. The faces around me blurred, passengers dissolving into indistinct shapes. A man across the aisle was reading a newspaper. A teenager had earbuds and nodding to music. Someone laughed at something on their phone. Normal life, and I was slipping out of it. Ilara. The name cut through the fog like a blade. That coffee. Her smile at the station. Too bright. Too eager. It's your favorite, Dad. I made sure they got it just right. I'd tasted it. I'd noticed the bitterness, the faint chemical aftertaste. But I dismissed it, blamed the cheap station beans, blamed nerves, blamed my aging palate. It wasn't the beans. She did this. The realization struck harder than the physical symptoms. A jolt of clarity amid the haze. My lungs tried to pull in air, but breathing felt thick and heavy as if I were inhaling through damp cloth. I forced myself to sit up straighter, willing my body to respond. Stand. You have to stand. If I could just make it to the bathroom. Splash cold water on my face. Call someone. Text Everett. Something. My legs trembled as I pushed up from the seat. For one suspended, hopeful second, I thought I might manage it. I rose halfway, gripping the seat back in front of me, the aisle stretching out like a narrow corridor of light. Then my knees buckled. The floor rushed upward. I hit the linoleum hard, the impact jarring through my jaw and cheekbone. The surface was cold and faintly sticky, smelling of disinfectant and stale coffee. My vision fractured into shards of brightness and shadow. Somewhere far away, a woman screamed. Voices layered over one another, panicked, confused. Sir. Footsteps thudded closer. Hands gripped my shoulders, turning me onto my back. The ceiling lights exploded into white stars above me, spinning, multiplying. I squeezed my eyes shut against the glare, but the light burned through my eyelids. Sir, can you hear me? The voice was steady, controlled, not hysterical. It cut through the noise like a lighthouse beam through fog. Not Ilara. I forced my eyes open. A woman hovered over me, sharp cheekbones, focused dark eyes, auburn hair pulled back into a practical ponytail. She wore jeans and a navy sweater. A paperback book lay abandoned on the seat beside her. One hand pressed firmly against my wrist fingers, checking my pulse with practiced precision. Stay with me, she said. My name is Julia. I'm a doctor. Can you tell me your name? My tongue felt like it had turned to stone. I tried to shape the words Ambrose Winthrop, but nothing emerged. My lips moved uselessly, air escaping in a faint rasp. Julia's gaze sharpened. She leaned closer, lifting one of my eyelids with her thumb. Dilated, she murmured. Uneven response. Her jaw tightened. And he's diaphoretic, she added almost to herself. Cold sweat. Then her voice shifted, no longer calm but commanding. I need someone to pull the emergency brake. Now. A ripple of protest traveled through the car. You can't just stop the train, a man objected. We're between stations. Do it, Julia snapped, never taking her hand off my pulse. This man is in acute medical distress. If we don't get him off this train immediately, he might not survive. The finality in her tone silenced the argument. Seconds later, metal screamed against metal. The train lurched violently. Passengers stumbled, clutching seats, bracing themselves against the sudden deceleration. The entire car jolted forward, then shuddered. Through it all, Julia remained steady. Her fingers pressed against my wrist. Her eyes stayed locked on mine. "Stay with me," she said again, softer now. "What's your name? Focus on me." I wanted to tell her everything. Ambrose Winthrop, 72 years old, former CEO husband, father, widower. I wanted to say Angela's name. I wanted to say Alara's. Instead, the world narrowed. My vision tunneled, shrinking to a dark circle around Julia's face. The edges folded inward like the closing iris of a camera. If this is how it ends, I thought dimly, it won't be quiet. It won't be gentle. It will be messy, and it will be her fault. Julia's face wavered in and out of focus. Her voice became distorted, as if filtered through water. "Pulse is erratic," she said to someone nearby. "Respiration's shallow. We need to get him to a clinic as soon as this train stops." The brakes screamed louder now, a violent grinding that reverberated through my skull. Finally, with one last bone-rattling jolt, the train came to a halt. Cold air rushed in as the doors were forced open. Hands slid beneath my arms and legs. I was lifted awkwardly, unceremoniously, my body no longer something I controlled. The world tilted sideways again as they carried me down the aisle past stunned passengers and scattered belongings. The platform outside was small and nearly empty. A single bench. A faded station sign with peeling white letters, Millbrook Station. I barely registered it. The air was sharp with autumn chill biting against my clammy skin. My head lolled to one side. Julia was beside me, walking quickly, her hand still anchored at my wrist, as though that fragile connection might tether me to consciousness. "Stay with me," she repeated. "Just a little longer." I tried. God, I tried, but my body felt distant now, like something happening to someone else. The light fractured further, dissolving into streaks. Sounds stretched and warped as though time itself were bending. I caught fragments. "Is there a clinic nearby?" "5 minutes. Call ahead." My chest tightened again. The pounding in my ears grew louder, drowning out everything else. The last thing I saw clearly was Julia's face, leaning close, eyes, fierce and certain. "This isn't a heart attack," she said firmly. "This is something else." Darkness surged upward, swallowing the light. She was right. It wasn't my heart. It was something deliberate, something measured, something poured into a cup of coffee by a woman who smiled as I drank it. And as the world finally went black, one final thought flickered through the void. Ilara didn't just want me sick. She wanted me gone. 3 hours after I collapsed on the train, I opened my eyes to a room that smelled faintly of disinfectant and old paper. It wasn't a hospital. I knew that immediately. The space was too small, too quiet. There were no monitors beeping, no rolling carts clattering down polished corridors. Just a narrow bed with stiff white sheets, a wooden chair positioned near a thin window, and a dented metal cabinet in the corner marked with a faded red cross. The pale yellow paint on the walls had chipped in places, revealing older layers beneath remnants of decades past. The air carried a stillness that hospitals never quite achieve. Through the narrow window, I saw a quiet street. Worn storefronts with sun-bleached signs, a bakery with a crooked awning, a hardware shop that looked as if it hadn't changed since the 70s. A single traffic light swayed gently in the breeze, its rhythm slow and indifferent. Millbrook. The name surfaced from the haze. I remembered the peeling station sign as they carried me off the train. A town so small it barely existed on most maps. A place people passed through without ever noticing. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere unlikely to attract attention. When I tried to sit up, my body resisted. My muscles felt weighted as though sand had been poured into my limbs. A dull ache pulsed behind my eyes. My mouth tasted dry and metallic. But beneath the physical weakness, something else had returned. Clarity. My thoughts were sharp. Cleaner than they had been in hours. "Easy." The voice came from the doorway. I turned my head slowly and saw her standing there. Julia. She leaned against the frame for a moment before stepping inside. Her auburn hair was pulled back into the same efficient ponytail I remembered from the train. The navy sweater was gone. In its place, she wore a white lab coat that clearly wasn't hers. The sleeves, slightly short, rolled to her elbows. Her expression was composed, professional, but her eyes studied me carefully, searching for signs. "How are you feeling?" she asked, crossing the room. I swallowed, testing my voice. It scraped against my throat, but held. "Like I got hit by a truck," I said. One corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "That's good," she replied. "It means you're coherent." She pulled the wooden chair closer and sat down, leaning forward slightly, forearms resting on her knees. For a few seconds, she simply observed me. I could almost see the questions lining up behind her gaze. "What happened to me?" I asked. The question felt unnecessary. I already knew. But I needed to hear her say it. She inhaled slowly before answering. "You presented with symptoms consistent with chemical exposure," she said. "Dilated pupils, irregular heart rhythm, profuse cold sweating, loss of motor coordination. Your breathing became shallow and erratic." Her tone remained calm, clinical. "It wasn't a heart attack," she continued. "And it wasn't a stroke. Poison." The word formed silently in my mind. I kept my face neutral, though inside thoughts moved rapidly. Ilara had been careful. Whatever she put into that coffee had been subtle, nearly tasteless, slow enough to take effect after boarding, quiet enough to appear natural. If Julia hadn't been on that train, I would be dead. "I contacted Dr. Nathan Wells," she said next. Of course she did. Nathan had been my physician for nearly 30 years. He knew my history better than I did. "What did he say?" I asked. "He confirmed you're in excellent health for 72. No cardiac history. No neurological issues. No medications that would cause a reaction like this." Her eyes sharpened slightly. "Nothing that explains what happened." Silence settled between us, which meant unspoken, but understood, that this had not been accidental. I shifted my gaze toward the window. Outside, a delivery truck rolled slowly past. A small bird hopped along the curb. The late afternoon sun cast a warm golden wash across the street, peaceful and deceptively ordinary. "Maybe I mixed up my pills," I said lightly. "Age has a way of complicating things." She didn't respond immediately. She knew I was lying. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't press the issue. "Not yet." "Mr. Winthrop," she said carefully, "if someone did this to you, you need to contact the police. And your family." "My family." The word landed with weight. "Tell them my daughter-in-law tried to kill me without proof. Without toxicology reports. Without evidence." I would sound paranoid, delusional, grieving too deeply for Angela. And if Ilara knew I suspected her, she would adjust. She would cover her tracks. She would become careful in ways I could not anticipate. "No," I said firmly. "No police, no family." Her brow furrowed. "Why?" "Because I need time," I answered. "If I go home now, if I alert anyone, the situation escalates, and I won't have control of it." She studied me for a long moment. "This is a terrible idea," she said quietly. "I know. You could be in serious danger." "I know." She exhaled through her nose, frustration flickering across her face. "You're asking me to discharge a possible poisoning victim without reporting it. I'm asking you to give me a few days." I reached for my jacket, which had been folded neatly on a chair nearby. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled my wallet from the inner pocket. I counted 5 crisp $100 bills and held them out toward her. "For your help," I said, "and your discretion." Her eyes dropped to the money, then rose to meet mine. "I don't want this. I understand. But take it anyway." It wasn't a bribe. Not entirely. It was gratitude. It was insurance. It was acknowledgement of the line I was asking her to cross. After a long pause, she accepted the bills, folding them carefully and slipping them into her coat pocket. "I'm going to regret this," she muttered. Probably I agreed. She reached into her lab coat and removed a card, placing it on the bedside table. "Doctora Julia Bennett, Emergency Medicine, Boston General Hospital." A phone number was written on the back in blue ink. "If you need anything," she said, standing now, "call me. Anytime." "I will." She hesitated at the door, as if considering whether to say more. Then she simply nodded and left her footsteps echoing faintly down the hallway. The room fell silent. I waited until I was certain she was gone before swinging my legs over the side of the bed. Pain flared briefly behind my eyes. My body protested the movement, but I could stand. Slowly, carefully. I crossed to the window and rested one hand against the cool glass. The sun was lowering toward the horizon. Shadows stretched across the street. The traffic light blinked from green to yellow to red, obedient and predictable. Somewhere else, miles away, Ilara was likely receiving news of a medical emergency on a train. Or perhaps no news at all. Perhaps she was already assuming the worst, already calculating next steps. She thought I was gone. For the first time in years, I felt something clean and sharp rise in my chest. Not grief, not fear, focus. Ilara hadn't acted impulsively. She had chosen the timing, the location, the delivery method. She had ensured I drank every last drop. That wasn't anger-driven. That was strategic, which meant she expected closure, a clean outcome, a funeral. I stepped back from the window and pulled my phone from my pocket. The screen lit up, displaying a series of missed notifications from earlier in the day, none of them from Ilara. Interesting. I scrolled to a name I had not called in months. Vincent Miller. Vince, my oldest friend, former chief financial officer, the most analytical mind I knew. The only person I trusted without hesitation. I pressed call. It rang twice, 3 times. Then voicemail. I ended the call before it connected. Not yet. This needed to be precise. I sat back down on the bed, folding my hands together. My pulse had steadied. My breathing was even. Ilara wanted me erased. She wanted control of what I built. The company. The assets. The house. Perhaps even the life insurance policy Everett had insisted I update last year. She had planned this carefully, which meant she would not expect resistance. She would not expect silence. She would not expect me to vanish willingly. A slow, deliberate idea formed in my mind. If she believed I was dead or dying, she would act freely. She would reveal intentions she would otherwise conceal. She would move money. She would contact people. She would show her hand. All I had to do was disappear. I walked back to the window one last time and looked out over the quiet street of Millbrook. The town felt forgotten by the world. Perfect. Ilara wanted me erased. She would get her wish. I would disappear. But I would not stay gone, and when I returned, it would not be as a victim. Vincent picked up on the 3rd ring. Theo. His voice came through warm and steady, threaded with surprise. I thought you were on a train to Angela's hometown. I need your help, I said, cutting him off before he could finish. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. And I need you to keep this between us. Silence followed. Not the confused kind, the calculating kind. I could almost see him in my mind, leaning back in his office chair, eyes narrowing slightly, running through possibilities. Vincent Miller had built his empire by dissecting chaos and finding the pattern underneath. He didn't panic. He assessed. What happened? He asked finally. His tone sharpened, the warmth replaced by focus. I leaned back against the thin headboard of the motel bed and closed my eyes for a second. The room smelled faintly of stale air and cheap cleaner. Peeling wallpaper curled at the corners. A single lamp on the nightstand cast a dull amber glow. I had paid cash 2 nights, no ID copied, no questions asked. The television next door murmured through the wall, some late-afternoon talk show host laughing at something that didn't matter. Outside, a street lamp flickered, casting unsteady light through the thin curtains. I told him everything. The coffee, the platform, the metallic taste, the numbness spreading through my limbs like liquid ice, the collapse in the aisle, Julia Bennett, the stranger who had noticed the symptoms no one else would have recognized, the emergency stop, the clinic in Millbrook, and Ilara. When I finished, the line remained quiet for several seconds. Jesus. Theo Vincent breathed at last. His voice was tight now, anger pressing through the restraint. Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure it was her? I'm sure. There was no hesitation in my answer. No room for doubt. But why he pressed? Why would she risk something like that? Money, I said flatly. She and Everett are in debt. More than they've admitted. And I'm worth more gone than I am alive. Vincent swore under his breath, a string of curses I hadn't heard from him since our early startup days when deals fell apart and investors backed out at the last minute. He was angry, protective, but anger wouldn't fix this. Where are you now? He asked. Millbrook, a motel off Route 9. I glanced around the cramped room. I'm not coming home. That landed heavily between us. What are you planning? He asked carefully. I opened my eyes and stared up at the ceiling. A water stain spread across the plaster like a faded map of a country that no longer existed. Justice, I said. Not revenge. Justice. Theo! She tried to erase me. I said the words gaining weight as I spoke them aloud. If I walk back into that house and call the police, she'll deny everything. She'll paint me as confused, old, paranoid, and maybe they'll believe her. Maybe they won't. But either way, she'll know I suspect her. And you think she'd try again? I know she would. Silence again. Not disbelief. Consideration. So what's the alternative? He asked. I sat up slowly, swinging my legs over the edge of the bed. My body still carried a dull ache, but it was manageable now. Controlled. I disappear, I said. For real. Let her think she succeeded. Let her believe I'm gone. Vincent exhaled slowly. And then what? And then I said I make her regret it. A short laugh escaped him, half disbelief, half admiration. You're serious. Completely. Theo, that sounds like… I know what it sounds like, I interrupted. But I'm not asking for approval. I'm asking if you're in. The line went quiet again. I could picture him walking to the window of his office, looking out over the city skyline, processing variables. Then he spoke. Yeah, he said finally. Yeah, I'm in. A tightness in my chest loosened. When can you get here? I asked. 3 hours. Maybe less if traffic cooperates. Good. Tell no one. Not your wife, not your assistant. No emails, no calendar entries. Understood. He hesitated. Theo, Alara has access to your house, right? She does, I said. Everett gave her the security codes after Angela passed. She's been managing things. And the smart home system, he asked. The same. I heard the shift in his tone then. Concern turning into strategy. Theo Vincent said slowly, your house isn't just a house. It's an integrated system. Cameras, lighting, speakers, climate control, smart locks, motion sensors, all connected. I'm aware. If she thinks you're dead, he continued, she'll relax. She'll start accessing accounts, moving money, using the house as her base. And she won't expect anyone else in the system. I felt something cold and deliberate settle into place. That's what I'm counting on, I said. There was a faint rustle on his end of the line papers, shifting, perhaps a keyboard sliding closer. You remember who built the back end? He asked quietly. You. I know every line of that code, every access point, every vulnerability. If you want to monitor her, I can. If you want to unsettle her, I can do that too. I stood and crossed to the window, pulling the curtain aside, just enough to see the darkening street below. Unsettle, I repeated. Lights flickering at odd hours. Temperature shifts. Speakers activating randomly. Security alerts she can't trace. A presence she can't explain. A presence. The word lingered. Alara believed in control, in perception, in narrative. She had crafted the scene at the station carefully. The smile, the wave, the coffee. She believed the story was finished. She wanted me gone, I said quietly. And you're going to give her that, Vincent replied. Yes. He paused, then added, Theo, you realize this won't be simple. It doesn't have to be simple, I said. It just has to be precise. And what about Everett? The question hit harder than the rest. Everett, my son. Was he complicit or merely negligent? I don't know yet, I admitted. That's why I need time. Time to watch. Time to gather evidence. Time to see who moves first. All right, Vincent said. Here's how this works. I'll drive down with a portable server unit. We'll reroute access through a secondary channel she doesn't know exists. If she logs into your accounts from the house network, we'll see it. If she tries to transfer funds, we'll flag it. And if she panics, I asked. She won't, Vincent said confidently. Not at first. She'll feel safe. That's when people make mistakes. I smiled faintly at that. 3 hours, I reminded him. I'll be there, he said. There was a brief pause. Theo. Yes, I'm glad you're still alive. I almost laughed. Me too, Vince. The line disconnected. I set the phone down and stood in the dim motel room listening to the faint hum of traffic outside. The world carried on unaware. Cars passed. Someone laughed in the distance. A dog barked. Normalcy. I walked to the mirror above the sink and studied my reflection. 72 years old. Gray hair thinning at the temples. Lines etched deeper than they had been a year ago. Ambrose Winthrop. Husband. Father. Former CEO. A man who believed loyalty was reciprocal. The man Ilara thought she knew. She believed she had eliminated a liability. She believed the narrative was under her control. She believed she had won. I reached up and adjusted the collar of my shirt, steadying my gaze. That version of me, the trusting widower, the aging father, was gone now. He had collapsed on a train floor and almost never stood up again. What remained was something quieter, colder, more deliberate. Ilara wanted me erased. She would get her wish. Ambrose Winthrop would disappear. And when I returned, it would not be as prey. It would be as the architect of her undoing. By midnight, Ambrose Winthrop no longer existed. At least not in any way Ilara could track. In the digital age, disappearing isn't complicated. You cancel a phone, freeze a card, reroute an IP address, pull down social media, change access credentials. Within hours, a man can become static in the system. Staying hidden, that's the difficult part. Vincent arrived just after 10. His silver sedan rolled quietly into the motel lot, headlights off, engine barely audible. I was already waiting by the window bag, packed, lights off. When he stepped out of the car, he didn't wave, didn't smile, just nodded once. We didn't waste time. The drive west was nearly silent. The farther we moved from Riverside, the easier it became to breathe. Streetlights thinned into long stretches of darkness. Storefronts gave way to open road, then to forest. Pine trees crowded the highway, black silhouettes against a moonless sky. 50 miles later, we turned onto a gravel path that led into the woods. The cabin was small, almost an afterthought, tucked between tall pines. Vincent had rented it under a false name, paid in cash, left no paper trail. 1 bedroom. A narrow kitchenette. A stone fireplace that smelled faintly of old smoke and pine sap. No neighbors within sight. No security cameras. No Wi-Fi listed publicly. Off the grid. This will do, I said quietly, setting my bag near the door. Vincent was already moving laptop case under his arm. He set it down on the wooden table near the center of the room and opened it. The glow from the screen cast pale blue light across his face, sharpening the angles of his expression. Give me a minute, he said, fingers already moving. While he worked, I knelt by the fireplace and arranged kindling. The logs caught quickly, flames snapping and spitting warmth into the cold air. The scent of burning wood filled the cabin, grounding and ancient. Behind me, I heard Vincent mutter something, half irritation, half triumph. What is it? I asked without turning. I'm in, he said. I rose and walked over. Backdoor access, he continued. Installed during the last system upgrade, 2 years ago. You remember, we said we'd keep an emergency override. Ilara has no idea it exists. On the screen, a grid of live camera feeds appeared. My house. Living room. Kitchen. Hallway. Master bedroom. The images were black and white, slightly grainy, but clear enough to see everything that mattered. Full control, I asked. Lights, locks, thermostats, speakers, cameras, alarm system, he replied. She thinks she owns the environment. She doesn't. We do. I studied the feeds, already structuring the next steps in my mind. 3 phases. First, absence. Let Alara realize I hadn't come home. Let her uncertainty turn into anxiety. Second, disruption. Subtle at first. Lights flickering, thermostat shifting. A speaker activating at 3:17 a.m., the time she called the insurance company. Third, documentation. Watch, record. Capture every careless word, every incriminating call, every financial transfer. Eventually, she'll report you missing, Vincent said. What happens when law enforcement gets involved? They'll assume confusion, I answered calmly. 72-year-old man boards a train and never arrives. Cognitive decline. Wandering. It fits the narrative. And Julia, she won't volunteer anything unless someone asks very specific questions. And no one will. Vincent leaned back in his chair. For the record, he said, this crosses lines. Surveillance laws. Wiretapping. If we're caught, it won't be minor. I know, and you're prepared for that. I thought about the train floor, the cold linoleum, the metallic taste in my mouth. Yes, I said simply. Vincent shook his head lightly. You've lost it. I've always wanted to attend my own funeral, I said. This is as close as I'll get. He laughed despite himself. Pull up the living room, I said. Full screen. He clicked. The image expanded. Alara was there. She sat on my couch, as if she had always owned it. Legs crossed. A glass of red wine balanced in her hand. Relaxed. Across from her sat a man I had never seen before. Younger, early 40s perhaps. Lean build, tailored suit, polished shoes. The kind of man who projected confidence through posture alone. They were talking, gesturing, smiling, laughing. My jaw tightened. Zoom in, I said. Vincent captured a still image and ran facial recognition software. The program processed for several seconds before displaying a result. Garrett Sullivan, Vincent read aloud. Attorney, specializes in estate planning and probate litigation. Based in Riverside. He scrolled further. Multiple complaints over the past 5 years. Conflict of interest accusations. Questionable advisory practices. Nothing proven. An estate lawyer. Of course. She didn't improvise this, I said quietly. She planned it. Vincent nodded. Long game. Pull her financial activity. He hesitated for half a second, then complied. Multiple windows populated the screen bank activity call, logs, email, metadata, and there it was. A call placed yesterday, 3:15 p.m., to my insurance provider. Vincent clicked into the details. She inquired about the claims process, he said slowly. Specifically in cases where the insured individual is declared missing. Declared missing. I felt something cold settle deep in my chest. Not anger exactly, but confirmation. She calculated the timeline, I said. She knew when the train would depart. She knew how long before symptoms would appear. She knew I wouldn't make it far. Vincent didn't respond. He didn't need to. On screen, Alara laughed at something Garrett said. She lifted her wine glass, celebrating. She believes it worked, Vincent said quietly. Good, I replied. I walked to the window and looked out into the forest. The trees stood tall and silent, branches shifting faintly in the night wind. The world beyond the cabin was dark and vast. Somewhere in that house, Alara believed she was free. Free of oversight, free of resistance, free of me. Let her think she succeeded. I said, my voice low and steady. Let her relax. Let her move assets. Let her reveal who she truly is. Vincent closed one of the data windows and turned slightly toward me. And when she does, I watched my reflection faintly in the glass. An older man. Gray hair. Lines etched deep with loss. But behind the eyes, clarity. Then we apply pressure, I said. Controlled. Incremental. You're talking psychological warfare. I'm talking consequence. I turned back toward him. She wanted me erased. She wanted the narrative, the house, the money, the control. The fire behind us crackled sharply, sending sparks up the chimney. She'll have her silence, I continued. She'll have her illusion. Vincent's gaze met mine. And then he asked. I didn't smile. And then I said quietly, we dismantle everything she built on the assumption that I was dead. Ilara realized I was missing exactly 36 hours after she handed me that cup of coffee. I know the timing because Vincent had been logging everything. Timestamps, calls, movements, door sensors, login attempts. Precision mattered now. Every minute told a story. And when her realization finally came, it unfolded like theater. We had been watching the house since dawn that second day. The cabin was quiet except for the steady crackle of the fire and the faint hum of Vincent's laptop. Outside, wind threaded through the pines. Inside, the only light came from the screen between us. Ilara hadn't seemed worried the day before. She had made calls, ordered something online, 2 separate deliveries scheduled for the end of the week. She'd spent nearly 90 minutes on the porch with someone outside the camera's full range. She laughed once, checked her watch twice, poured herself wine at 4:12 p.m. Patient, that was the word that kept circling in my head. But by late afternoon on the second day, something changed. Vincent leaned forward slightly. There, he said quietly. On screen, Ilara paced the living room phone pressed to her ear. She was trying someone, no answer. She ended the call, tried again. Still nothing. Then she dialed my number. Through the house's integrated audio system, we heard the faint ring echo in the kitchen, 3 sharp tones before voicemail engaged. My phone sat exactly where I had left it on the counter 2 days earlier. Deliberately, Ilara walked into the kitchen, picked up the phone, and stared at it. She's looking for context, Vincent murmured. Calendar entries. Messages. Anything that explains why you didn't come back. I watched her thumb move quickly across the screen. She scrolled through recent calls, checked my email inbox, opened my text threads. Her jaw tightened. Then she went upstairs. Vincent switched camera feeds smoothly. The hallway view showed her moving with purpose toward my bedroom. She paused in the doorway for a moment, scanning the room as if expecting something to be different. Then she crossed to the closet, opened it, shifted hangers aside, checked the top shelf, moved to the dresser drawers. She's looking for your will, I said quietly. Vincent glanced at me. Does she know where you keep it? No. It's in a safe deposit box downtown. Only my attorney has access. Ilara closed the drawer with more force than necessary. Frustration flashed across her face before she smoothed it away. She stood in the center of the bedroom, hands on her hips, thinking. Then she made a call. Vincent increased the volume. Everett. Her voice trembled instantly, perfectly calibrated. Honey, I don't know how to say this, but your father. He never arrived at your grandmother's town. I've been trying to reach him for 2 days. He's not answering. We could hear Everett's voice faintly through the speaker, tinny distant, but clear enough. What do you mean he didn't arrive? I mean, he got on the train and never showed up. I called the neighbors there, they said he never came. Everett, I think something's wrong. Her voice cracked convincingly on the last word. Tears gathered in her eyes. She wiped them away with the heel of her palm. My jaw tightened. It's a performance, Vincent said. I know, I replied. But there was a moment, a fleeting, uncomfortable moment, where I questioned it. The tears looked real. The breath hitch sounded genuine. On the other end, Everett's voice rose, panic replacing confusion. Have you called the police? Not yet, she replied quickly. I wanted to talk to you first. I didn't want to cause a scene if maybe he just decided to stay somewhere else. Ilara, call them, now. I'm booking a flight home. Okay, she whispered. Okay. I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. It's not your fault, Everett said. Just call the police. She ended the call and stood there for several seconds, staring at the phone. I exhaled slowly. He didn't know, I said. Vincent's eyes flicked toward me. You're certain? I am. That wasn't staged. He's genuinely afraid. Vincent nodded once. Good. That simplifies things. Ilara walked downstairs and dialed again. This time it was the police. Hello, yes, she said, voice steady but threaded with worry. I need to report a missing person. My father-in-law, Ambrose Winthrop. He left for a trip 2 days ago and never arrived. He's 72. I'm very concerned. She delivered every detail cleanly. The train departure time, the destination, the fact that she had driven me to the station. Just enough information to appear cooperative. Thank you, she said at the end. Yes, I'll be here. She ended the call. For a moment, she simply stood in the kitchen alone. And then she smiled. It wasn't wide. It wasn't triumphant. Just a small, satisfied curve at the edge of her mouth. 3 seconds. Then it vanished. Vincent and I exchanged a look. An hour later, the doorbell camera activated. A woman stood at the door, mid-40s, short, dark hair, posture alert. Her badge caught the light briefly. Detective Lauren Beckett. Ilara opened the door with perfect timing. Eyes red-rimmed, shoulders slightly slumped. Thank you for coming, she said, voice fragile. I'm so worried about him. We're going to do everything we can, Mrs. Winthrop, the detective replied. Inside, Vincent switched to the living room camera. Ilara sat on the couch, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Detective Beckett sat opposite her notebook, open pen poised. They spoke for nearly 20 minutes. Ilara answered every question clearly, repeated timelines, provided receipts, mentioned the train station cafe. Even suggested maybe I had become disoriented. Sometimes he forgets small things, she said carefully. Nothing serious, just little moments. I felt a flicker of anger at that. She was planting seeds. After the detective left, Ilara closed the door and locked it. She stood still for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and dialed again. Her voice changed instantly. It's done, she said. Gone was the tremble. Gone was the concern. Flat, controlled, cold. He's gone. The police are looking, but they won't find anything. A pause. A man's voice responded faintly on the other end. I know, she said. Just give it time. 7 years and we can file for a legal declaration. But the insurance will start processing within 6 months if they don't recover a body. Vincent and I didn't need to confirm it. That's Garrett, I said quietly. I know, Vincent replied. Ilara gave a short, sharp laugh. Relax, she added. Everything's fine. The old man's out of the picture. No one suspects a thing. She ended the call and walked upstairs. The cabin fell silent except for the fire's soft crackle. Vincent leaned back slowly. Detective Lauren Beckett is thorough, he said. She won't close this quickly. Good, I replied. He looked at me. You're planning to use her. Yes. I turned my attention back to the frozen frame on the laptop screen. Ilara, mid-laugh, wine glass raised slightly in her hand. The performance was over. The real Ilara had stepped into view. Cold, calculated, confident. She believed the story was finished. She believed the investigation would stall. She believed the insurance clock had started ticking in her favor. She believed she had removed me from the equation. Vincent glanced at me. What's next? I studied the screen a moment longer. Now I said quietly, we make her doubt her certainty. 3 days after I vanished, Ilara found the first message I left for her. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a threat. It was a single white rose, Angela's flower. I watched it happen through the soft blue glow of Vincent's laptop screen. Morning light poured through the kitchen windows of my house, stretching long golden bars across the hardwood floor. Dust floated in the air like nothing had changed, like nothing terrible had happened. Everett had flown home the day after she reported me missing. He'd spent 48 hours answering questions, pacing hallways, speaking with Detective Beckett, calling hospitals. He was genuinely afraid. I could see it in the way he rubbed his forehead, in the way he sat at the dining table long after everyone else had left. But then reality pulled him back. Meetings, contracts, a business that didn't pause for grief. Ilara told him to return to work. She said she could handle it. She couldn't. Vincent and I had planned the rose carefully. Symbolism mattered. Angela had adored white roses. For 30 years, I brought them home every Friday. They sat on our bedside table, on the kitchen island, in hospital rooms when the doctors stopped speaking in hopeful tones. Ilara knew that. She had seen the flowers in every stage of Angela's life and death, which meant she understood what they represented. And now one had appeared in the kitchen, placed neatly on the counter beside the coffee machine, as if someone had stood there quietly at dawn and set it down with care. "Maggie came through," Vincent said softly beside me. I nodded. Maggie O'Brien had been part of our lives longer than Alara. She had held Everett as an infant. She had driven Angela to appointments when I couldn't. When I sent her an encrypted message with simple instructions, place a white rose on the kitchen counter at 6 a.m. Tell no one. She didn't hesitate. She never asked why. Trust like that is rare. On screen, Alara entered the kitchen at precisely 7. Bathrobe loosely tied, hair pulled back into a casual ponytail. Still half asleep, she took 3 steps into the room. Stopped. Her gaze locked onto the counter. For a full 10 seconds, she didn't move. Then she crossed the room slowly, almost cautiously, and picked up the rose. She turned it over in her hands, as if inspecting something fragile and dangerous at the same time. Her face drained of color. She looked toward the back door. Locked. Checked the windows. Locked. Walked to the front door. Also locked. She stood in the center of the kitchen, white rose in her hand, trying to reconstruct a version of reality where this made sense. Vincent leaned forward slightly. "That's fear," he murmured. "Good," I replied. Alara pulled out her phone. "Maggie," she said when the call connected. Her voice was steady but tight, controlled. "Did you bring something to the house this morning?" "A flower." There was a pause. Maggie's voice came through calm and puzzled. "Bring what Mrs. Winthrop. A rose. A white rose. It's on the kitchen counter. I haven't been there yet. I'm not scheduled until tomorrow." Ilara's fingers tightened around the stem. "You're sure? Quite sure? Is everything all right?" "Yes," Ilara replied quickly. "Yes, thank you." She ended the call. For a moment she simply stared at the rose again, as if expecting it to dissolve. Then she made another call. "Garrett." Her voice had lowered now, almost conspiratorial. "There's a rose. A white rose. In the kitchen. The kind Ambrose used to buy for Angela." Garrett's voice was faint but audible. "Maybe Everett brought it. He's at work. And he doesn't even remember the roses. He was too young. Then maybe you—" "All the doors are locked," she snapped. "All the windows. No one's been here except me." A pause. "You're exhausted," Garrett said. "You haven't slept. Maybe you brought it in yesterday and forgot." "I didn't." "Ilara!" "I didn't." Another pause. "Fine," he said finally. "Then it's nothing." Maybe the housekeeper came by earlier than she remembered. She didn't. Then throw it away and stop thinking about it. Ilara ended the call without another word. She walked to the trash can, lifted the lid, dropped the rose inside, but her hand trembled. I allowed myself the smallest smile. Vincent glanced at me, expression unreadable. "You're enjoying this?" I didn't answer. She had watched me drink that coffee. She had stood on the platform as the train pulled away. She had already imagined the obituary. She wanted me erased, I said quietly. She wanted the house, the accounts, the clean transfer of power. On screen, Ilara leaned both hands on the counter, staring down at nothing. She wanted me gone. I looked at the frozen image of her pale face. Now she gets to wonder. Vincent turned back to the laptop and began typing. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Phase 2, he said. "The rose was only a signal. We escalate carefully." "How?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he routed a masked number through 3 different servers before linking it to a disposable device. "Fear isn't about volume," he said calmly. "It's about precision." That night, Ilara went to bed earlier than usual. The bedroom camera showed her lying flat on her back, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. The bedside lamp remained on. Everett had stayed late at the office again. She was alone. At 11:47 p.m., her phone buzzed. The sound seemed louder in the quiet room. She flinched, picked it up. The screen illuminated her face in pale blue. Unknown number. 5 words. "Do you like the flowers?" Her breathing changed instantly. She sat upright, looked around the room. Toward the closet, toward the door, toward the bathroom. Nothing. The house was silent. The hallway lights remained off. The thermostat hummed softly. The air moved normally, but something invisible had shifted. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She didn't respond. Instead, she locked the phone and placed it back on the nightstand. Then she turned off the lamp. Darkness swallowed the room, but her eyes stayed open. I watched her through the night vision feed, face pale against the pillow, listening to every creak of settling wood. Vincent glanced sideways at me. "She'll start questioning herself tomorrow," he said quietly. "Whether she imagined the rose, whether someone's watching." "She should," I replied. "Because someone was, not a ghost, not guilt, me. One rose, one message, and the certainty she thought she had built for herself was already cracking. She wanted me gone. Instead, she would learn what it felt like to live in a house that no longer felt safe. One rose down, many more to come. Ilara heard my voice for the first time at exactly 2:03 a.m. Or rather, she heard what she believed was my voice. A whisper threading through the darkness of her bedroom, soft and deliberate, barely louder than breath against skin. Ilara, 1 week after I disappeared, she was still sleeping under my roof. In the bedroom she shared with Everett, just down the hallway from the master bedroom, where Angela and I had slept for 3 decades, where white roses had once sat in a crystal vase by the window. Everett had flown back immediately after I was reported missing. He stayed 48 hours. Spoke to Detective Beckett, retraced timelines, called hospitals, paced the living room with his phone pressed tight to his ear. His fear was real. I could see it in the way he clenched his jaw when Ilara wasn't looking. Then he left again. Meetings, clients, deadlines that didn't bend for grief. Ilara had encouraged him to go. "I'll be fine," she'd said. She wasn't alone. Garrett had moved into the downstairs guest room 3 days after the white rose appeared. "For protection," she told Everett. "Until things calmed down." Protection. I knew better. They were in this together, and now they were both sleeping in my house. Perfect. At the cabin, Vincent and I watched the infrared feed from the bedroom camera. The room was drenched in shadow moonlight slicing through a gap in the curtains. Ilara lay on her side, one arm tucked beneath her pillow, breathing slow and even, until the whisper. Her eyes snapped open. She didn't move at first, just stared into the dark, body rigid, listening. I could see the shift, immediately breathing shallow, now pulse visible in the hollow of her throat. "Good," Vincent murmured, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "She's alert." The smart speaker on her nightstand appeared lifeless. No light, no glow, no sign of activity. But appearances are deceptive. Vincent had accessed the system days earlier, bypassing hardware controls entirely. Physical buttons meant nothing. From 50 miles away, he could make that device breathe, speak, whisper. Technology is a remarkable accomplice, and I was learning to inhabit it well. Ilara slowly pushed herself upright, eyes locked on the speaker. She reached over and tapped it. Nothing. She picked it up, turned it in her hands. Examined the base as if expecting to find wires or movement. "It's off," Vincent whispered. "She thinks she imagined it," I replied. Ilara placed the device back on the nightstand and lay down again. Pulled the blanket up to her chin. Closed her eyes. Forced a long exhale. Vincent glanced at me. I nodded once. He pressed the key. "I know what you did." The voice filled the room, low, hollow, distorted, just enough to feel unnatural, but unmistakably mine. Vincent had stitched it together from archived voicemails, adjusted tone, added faint reverb, stripped warmth from it until it sounded distant, like something rising from beneath the floorboards. Ilara didn't scream immediately. She gasped, sharp and involuntary. Then she shot upright, scrambling backward until her spine struck the headboard. Her hand clutched at her nightgown, fingers digging into fabric. "Jesus," she whispered, voice shaking. Her eyes darted to the speaker. She grabbed it, hurled it across the room. It struck the wall with a dull crack and clattered to the hardwood floor. Silence followed. thick. Then footsteps thundered up the stairs. The bedroom door flew open, and Garrett appeared, hair disheveled, eyes wide still in sleep-wrinkled clothes. Ilara. He crossed the room quickly and sat on the edge of the bed. What happened? She was trembling now, shoulders rigid, breath uneven. I heard she swallowed. I heard his voice. Whose? Ambrose's. Garrett glanced toward the fallen speaker, then back to her. You're exhausted, he said carefully. You haven't slept. The stress. I'm not imagining it, she snapped, panic bleeding through. He said my name. He said. She stopped herself. Garrett stood, retrieved the speaker, examined it. It's powered off, he said gently. See, there's nothing. I know what I heard. He set it down on the dresser. Ilara, he said, lowering his voice, people don't just... He stopped short. She stared at him. Don't just what she asked. Don't just what Garrett. We don't even know if he's... Neither of them finished the sentence. At the cabin, I leaned closer to the screen. Garrett's composure was thinner than before. Jaw tight. Eyes calculating. Ilara looked pale, dark circles under her eyes, exhaustion etching her features. For a fleeting moment, something like hesitation passed through me. This house had once been full of laughter. Angela's voice echoing from the kitchen. Everett racing down the hallway as a child. The scent of pine from the Christmas tree every December. Now it held fear and manipulation. The hesitation faded quickly. Vincent zoomed in on the smart speaker resting on the dresser. He tapped another key. The LED blinked once so fast it might have been imagined. But I saw it. Come downstairs, Garrett said, finally extending his hand. You're not staying in here tonight. Ilara hesitated, then nodded. He helped her to her feet and guided her out of the room. The bedroom door remained open. I switched camera feeds, tracking them down the hallway, down the staircase, into the living room. Ilara sank onto the couch and wrapped a throw blanket tightly around her shoulders. Garrett disappeared briefly into the kitchen, returned with a glass of water, and handed it to her. Drink, he said. She obeyed, though her hands shook against the glass. He sat beside her, not touching, but close enough to imply something unspoken. You need rest, he murmured. I can't, she whispered. Not up there. Not anymore. Then stay here, he said. I'll stay. There was a pause. A look passed between them. It wasn't merely lawyer and client. It wasn't comfort. It was shared understanding, shared risk, shared guilt. I sat back in my chair at the cabin, the laptop's glow casting cool light across my face. Garrett wasn't just advising her. He was invested, emotionally, strategically, romantically perhaps. Ilara refused to return upstairs. She remained on the couch, every light in the house switched on, kitchen, hallway, porch lights blazing against the darkness. Garrett stayed beside her. They spoke in low tones for nearly an hour. I couldn't hear every word, but I didn't need to. Fear had taken root. And once fear enters a house, it changes the air. Vincent leaned back slightly. She won't sleep in that room again, he said. Good, I replied, because discomfort was only the beginning. Phase 1 had been uncertainty. Phase 2 was intrusion. Tomorrow night would bring escalation. I watched Ilara glance repeatedly toward the staircase as though expecting footsteps, expecting something else. Perhaps another whisper. Perhaps my name. Let her feel watched. Let her question her memory. Let her wonder whether guilt has a voice. Because this was only the first time she heard me, and I intended to speak again. Detective Lauren Beckett did not believe in accidents, and 10 days after I disappeared, she made it clear to Ilara that my vanishing contained too many convenient details to be random. From the cabin, I watched the interview unfold through the living room camera. The image was sharp enough to read expressions clearly. Ilara sat on the edge of the couch, spine, rigid hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone pale. Garrett occupied the armchair near the window legs, crossed posture, deliberately relaxed. Lauren sat opposite them, notebook resting on her knee, pen poised but still. She was 44, perhaps. 45, sharp features, short, dark hair, threaded with early gray at the temples. Her posture radiated discipline. She didn't fidget. She didn't rush. She absorbed. I had seen her type before. Career investigators who listened far more than they spoke, and she was listening to everything. Mrs. Winthrop Lauren began evenly, "Let's walk through the morning." Ambrose left. From the beginning. Ilara nodded once. She had taken care with her appearance foundation masking sleepless nights, lipstick restoring color to her mouth, but her hands betrayed her. They trembled slightly as she spoke. "I drove him to the station," she said, "around 7:30. He wanted to visit his late wife's hometown. He went every year." Lauren made a brief note. "How did he seem?" "Normal," Ilara replied softly. "Quiet. A little sad. This time of year was hard for him. He missed Angela." Lauren's pen moved again. "Any complaints, health concerns?" "No, nothing unusual. He was tired maybe." "But he was 72. Lauren looked up. "You purchased coffee for him?" "Yes." Ilara's voice remained steady, though her pulse fluttered visibly at her throat. "There was a cafe near the platform. He always drank it black. And then I walked him to the train. We said goodbye. He boarded. That was the last time I saw him." Lauren's gaze sharpened slightly. "Did you notice anyone paying particular attention to him, anyone following?" "No," Ilara answered quickly. "What about his phone?" "It's still here," Ilara said, glancing toward the kitchen. "He left it behind." Lauren paused, pen suspended in midair. "He left his phone?" "Yes." "That's unusual," Lauren said gently, "especially for someone traveling alone." Ilara shifted. "He was forgetful sometimes." Lauren's expression didn't change. Mrs. Winthrop Ambrose ran a telecommunications company for 3 decades. He was not careless with devices. Silence pressed into the room. Ilara's fingers tightened further. Garrett leaned forward. Detective Ilara's under enormous strain. "I don't think it's appropriate to." Lauren turned her attention to him without raising her voice. "And you are?" "Garrett Sullivan, family friend, attorney." Lauren wrote his name carefully. "You're residing here currently." "Temporarily," Garrett said. "Everett asked me to support Ilara while he's out of town." "I see." Lauren closed her notebook briefly, then reopened it. "Let's discuss finances." Ilara blinked. "Finances?" "Yes." "Did Ambrose maintain a will?" Ilara hesitated. Garrett began to speak, but Lauren lifted her hand, polite, firm. "Mrs. Winthrop." "Yes," Ilara said. "He had a will, and you're aware of its contents." "Not specifically. Everett would handle that. But you understand, you would benefit." "I assume so," Ilara answered faintly. "What about insurance?" Lauren continued. "Life insurance policies." Garrett stood abruptly. "Detective with respect. Everything is relevant," Lauren said calmly. "Money is rarely irrelevant in missing person cases." "I'm not accusing anyone," she added. "I am establishing context." Garrett's jaw tightened, but he sat back down. Lauren closed her notebook once more and rose to her feet. "If you recall anything that might assist the investigation, anything at all, contact me." She handed Ilara her card. Ilara accepted it with unsteady fingers. Lauren paused at the doorway. "One more question. Since Ambrose's disappearance, has anything unusual occurred in the home?" The question landed with weight. Ilara's color drained. Garrett responded too quickly. "No, nothing." Lauren's gaze lingered on Ilara. "Sometimes grief manifests in unexpected ways. Strange perceptions. Sounds. Patterns." Ilara swallowed. "No," she whispered. Lauren held her gaze a moment longer, then offered a professional smile and stepped outside. The door closed. Ilara exhaled sharply and sank back against the couch. "She knows," she whispered. "She knows something isn't right." Garrett moved beside her, lowering himself onto one knee. "She knows nothing. She's fishing." She asked about the will. "That's standard. What if she starts digging?" "She won't find anything," Garrett said firmly. "There's nothing to find." From the cabin, I leaned back in my chair. Lauren Beckett was not fishing blindly. She had noticed Ilara's trembling hands. The deflection. Garrett's interruptions. The subtle shift in tone when money entered the conversation. She had also noticed the phone. Leaving a phone behind is careless. And I have never been careless. Lauren would return. Of that I was certain. The only question was how soon. Vincent glanced at me. She's good. Yes, I said quietly. She is. That complicated things. Fear could unnerve Ilara. Technology could unsettle her. But law enforcement required precision. One misstep. One unauthorized access, traceable to Vincent. One misplaced message, and everything would collapse. Ilara believed she had orchestrated a perfect disappearance. Lauren believed coincidence was a myth. And I stood between them, unseen, unheard, orchestrating shadows. I had to move carefully now, not louder, smarter, because the haunting was one thing. Outmaneuvering a detective like Lauren Beckett would require something else entirely. Control, and I intended to keep it. 2 weeks after I went missing, Vincent found the security footage from Riverside Station. What we saw on that grainy black and white recording changed everything and confirmed my worst fears. It was late when he found it. We'd been at the cabin for days, working through system after system, trying to piece together evidence. Vincent had been focused on the train station's security network for hours, his face illuminated by the glow of his laptop screen, fingers flying across the keyboard. The coffee in his mug had gone cold. Mine too. Neither of us had moved in over an hour. I got it, Vincent said, finally, his voice tight with exhaustion. Backdoor access. The station's security system is outdated, easy to breach if you know where to look. I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. Can you pull footage from 2 weeks ago? Give me a few minutes. He worked in silence, pulling up files, filtering through timestamps. The cabin was dark around us, the only light coming from the laptop and the dying embers in the fireplace. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. 3 hours later, Vincent found us. There, he said, freezing the playback. Platform 7, 7:32 a.m. I stared at the screen. The footage was grainy shot from a camera mounted high on a pillar near the coffee shop. But it was clear enough. There I was, standing near the platform, jacket over my arm, looking tired. And there was Ilara walking toward the cafe counter. Vincent played the footage forward. Ilara ordered 2 coffees. The barista handed them over in paper cups. Ilara paid, thanked her, then turned away from the counter. And that's when it happened. She set both cups down on a nearby counter just for a moment. Her back was to the camera. Her hand slipped into her purse. 3 seconds. That's all it took. Her hand came out holding something small, a vial maybe, or a bottle. She unscrewed the cap with one hand, tipped it over one of the cups. A clear liquid dripped in. Then she stirred it with a straw, capped the vial, slipped it back into her purse, and picked up both cups. When she turned around, she was smiling. That bright, easy smile I'd seen 1,000 times. Vincent paused the footage. I sat back in my chair, my hands clenched into fists. I'd suspected it. I'd known on some level that she'd done this. But seeing it, watching her calmly, methodically add something to my coffee, then smile as if nothing had happened, it hit me like a punch to the gut. She smiled. I said quietly, my voice rough. She handed me that cup and she smiled. Like it was just a normal Tuesday morning. Like she wasn't about to. I couldn't finish the sentence. Vincent didn't say anything. He just looked at me, his expression grim. I forced myself to take a slow breath. Play it again. He did. I watched Ilara's hand slip into her purse. Watched the vial come out. Watched the liquid drip into the cup, just a few drops barely visible. 3 seconds. That's all it took to try to erase a life. This is it. Vincent said, his voice low. This is the evidence we need. We have proof. Concrete proof. We can go to the police. I shook my head. Not yet. Vincent frowned. Theo, this proves she tried to harm me, I said. But we need more than that. We need to know why. We need to know who helped her and how deep this really goes. We already know Garrett's involved. Do we? We've seen him on the cameras. We've heard Ilara talk to him on the phone. But we don't have proof that he was part of the plan from the beginning. We don't have proof of motive. Vincent leaned back, running a hand through his hair. So, what do you want to do? I looked at the screen at Alara's frozen smile. We keep watching, I said. We keep gathering evidence, and we push her. We make her think she's losing control. We make her desperate enough to make mistakes. Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "This footage was obtained illegally, Theo. If we take this to the police, it might not hold up in court. I know. And if they find out we've been surveilling Alara, we could both end up in serious trouble." "I know that too," Vincent sighed. "You're playing a dangerous game. I'm aware." He turned back to the laptop, his jaw tight. "There's something else I found." He opened a new window, a spreadsheet filled with phone numbers, dates, times. "I pulled Alara's phone records for the last 6 months," Vincent said. "She's been calling one number almost every day, sometimes multiple times a day." He highlighted a row. I leaned in, squinting at the screen. The number was listed next to a name, Garrett Sullivan. 6 months, Vincent said. "They've been in contact for 6 months. Long before you went missing." I stared at the screen, my chest tight. 6 months. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This wasn't panic or desperation. This was planned. Carefully, methodically, for months. Vincent froze the security footage on Alara's face, that smile, that calm, easy smile. "Garrett Sullivan," I said quietly. "Attorney," Vincent nodded. "Estate law. Probate. He specializes in helping people navigate inheritance, wills, life insurance claims." Of course he did. I sat back, the pieces falling into place. Alara hadn't just wanted me gone. She'd been planning it for months. With Garrett's help. With his legal expertise. With his knowledge of how to make someone disappear and how to profit from it. "Shatim, we need to know how much he stands to gain," I said. "We need to know if he's just advising her or if he's getting a cut." 3 weeks after I went missing, I decided it was time to escalate the haunting. Phase 2 began on a Tuesday night, when Alara woke up to find every light in the house blazing, even though she'd turned them all off before going to bed. I watched it happen through Vincent's laptop screen, the night vision cameras giving me a perfect view of her panic. It was 3 in the morning. Alara had been asleep for less than 2 hours, restless, tossing, turning. The stress was wearing her down. Good. Vincent sat beside me at the cabin, his fingers hovering over the smart home app on his tablet. One tap, and every light in the house flicked on simultaneously. Alara bolted upright in bed, her eyes wide. She sat there for a moment, staring at the ceiling light above her, then at the hallway glowing outside her door. Then she threw off the blanket and got up, moving quickly through the house, checking every room. Living room lights on, kitchen lights on, hallway lights on, master bedroom lights on. No one was there, no intruders, no explanation. She stood in the middle of the living room, breathing hard, her hands shaking. Then she went through the house again, turning off every light one by one. By the time she got back to her bedroom, her hands were trembling. She climbed into bed, pulled the blanket up to her chin, and closed her eyes. Vincent waited exactly 10 minutes. Then he tapped the screen again. Every light in the house turned on. Alara sat up with a choked gasp, her face pale. She didn't get up this time. She just sat there staring at the doorway, her chest rising and falling too fast. "That's enough for tonight," I said quietly. Vincent powered down the lights one by one, leaving only the hallway lamp on, just enough so Alara wouldn't be in complete darkness. She didn't go back to sleep. The second night we escalated. Alara had spent the day on edge, jumping at every sound. Garrett had stayed home with her. He'd stopped going to his own place days ago, sleeping on the couch downstairs or in the guest room when Alara asked him to stay close. That night, they were both in the living room. Alara curled up on the couch with a glass of wine, Garrett sitting beside her, scrolling through his phone. At 2:47 a.m., Vincent triggered the master bedroom door. The sound was loud, clear, a long, slow creak as the door swung open. Garrett's head snapped up. Alara froze. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Garrett set his phone down. "Stay here." He got up and walked upstairs, his footsteps heavy on the old wooden stairs. I switched cameras, watching him reach the master bedroom. The door was wide open, swaying slightly. He stepped inside, looked around. Nothing. No one. He closed the door firmly, tested the latch. Locked it. Then he went back downstairs. It was just the wind, he told Ilara. The latch is old. It probably didn't catch properly. Ilara didn't look convinced, but she nodded. 5 minutes later, Vincent triggered the door again. Creak! Ilara's wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Garrett stared at the ceiling, his jaw tight. Okay, he said quietly. That's not the wind. He went upstairs again. This time I watched him check the door, the lock, the hinges. He even checked the windows. Everything was closed. Everything was locked. He came back downstairs and I could see the doubt creeping into his face. Maybe we should leave, Ilara whispered. Just for a few nights. We can go to your place. Garrett hesitated. Then he nodded. Yeah. Okay. Pack a bag. But before they could move, Vincent triggered the thermostat. The third night was the coldest. Ilara and Garrett had decided to stay. Partly because Ilara didn't want to admit she was scared. Partly because Garrett had convinced himself there was a rational explanation. Faulty wiring, maybe. Old house settling. Something. At 3:15 a.m., Vincent dropped the temperature to 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Ilara woke up, shivering, her breath misting in the air. She sat up, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders, and stared at the thermostat on the wall. 55 degrees Fahrenheit. She knew she'd set it to 72 before bed. She always did. She got up, walked over to the thermostat, and adjusted it back to 72. The heating system kicked on with a low hum. Then she climbed back into bed. 10 minutes later, Vincent dropped it to 50. Ilara woke up again, this time gasping from the cold. Her fingers were numb. Her breath came out in visible puffs. She looked at the thermostat. 50 degrees Fahrenheit. She started crying. Not loud, desperate sobs, just quiet, exhausted tears streaming down her face. She didn't even bother adjusting the thermostat this time. She just sat there, shaking her arms wrapped around herself. Garrett came upstairs, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and pulled her close. It's him, Ilara whispered, her voice breaking. Ambrose. He's here. He's doing this to me. Garrett held her tighter. He's gone, Ilara. People who are gone don't control thermostats. Ilara looked up at him, her eyes red and swollen. Then who is doing this? Garrett didn't have an answer. I powered down the camera feed, my work for the night done. Vincent looked at me in the dim light of the cabin. She's breaking Theo. I nodded slowly. Good. You're pushing her close to the edge. But not over it. Not yet. I need her clear-headed enough to make mistakes. Vincent closed the tablet and leaned back. What's next? I thought about Ilara sitting in my house, crying in Garrett's arms. I thought about the footage from the train station. I thought about the phone records showing months of planning. And I thought about my son. There's one more thing I need to do before the end game, I said. What's that? I looked at Vincent, my expression steady. I need to talk to my son. 4 weeks after I went missing, I did something I'd both feared and hoped for. I asked Vincent to arrange a meeting with my son. It was time for Everett to know the truth. All of it. What I was about to do would either bring my son back to me or lose him forever. But I had to take that risk. The cafe was small, tucked away in a strip mall 30 miles outside Riverside. The kind of place no one would think to look for us. Vincent had chosen it carefully, dim lighting, quiet corners, jazz playing softly in the background. Only a handful of customers scattered throughout the room. I sat at a table in the back, nursing a cup of coffee I couldn't drink. My hands were shaking. I hadn't seen Everett in 4 weeks. 4 weeks of watching him through cameras, listening to his voice on phone calls, seeing the worry in his face. 4 weeks of wondering if he'd believe me, if he'd forgive me, if he'd help me. Vincent sat 2 tables away, pretending to read a newspaper. He'd called Everett an hour ago, claiming to be a friend of mine with urgent information. Everett had agreed to come immediately. Now we waited. At 7:15, the door opened. Everett walked in, scanning the room. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, his shoulders tense. He was wearing a suit, probably coming straight from a business meeting. His eyes moved across the cafe, searching for whoever had called him. Then he saw me. He stopped. Just stopped mid-step, his body going completely still. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Wah, the word came out as a whisper, barely audible over the jazz music. I stood up slowly, my heart pounding so hard, I thought it might break through my ribs. "Hello, son?" For a moment, neither of us moved. We just stared at each other across the dim cafe, father and son separated by 4 weeks and a lifetime of lies. Then Everett moved. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and threw his arms around me, hugging me so tightly I could barely breathe. I hugged him back, closing my eyes, feeling the weight of him, the solid reality of him. My son. My boy. Oh my God. Everett said, his voice muffled against my shoulder. "Oh my God, Dad, we thought you were gone." Ilara said. He pulled back suddenly, his hands still gripping my shoulders, his eyes searching my face. "What the hell is going on? Where have you been? Why?" His voice cracked. "Why didn't you call? Why didn't you tell us you were okay?" I put my hands on his arms, steadying him. "Sit down, Everett. Please. I need to tell you something." He looked at me for a long moment, his expression shifting from relief to confusion to something like anger. Then he sat down heavily in the chair across from me. I sat down too, folding my hands on the table. "What I'm about to tell you is going to be hard to hear," I said quietly. "But I need you to listen. All the way through. Can you do that?" Everett nodded, his jaw tight. I took a deep breath, and I told him everything. The coffee at the train station. The strange taste I'd ignored. The train ride, the numbness spreading through my body. Dr. Julia Bennett saving my life at a small clinic in Millbrook. My decision to stay hidden to investigate to find out who had tried to harm me. And Ilara. Everett shook his head before I even finished. No, that's insane. Ilara she couldn't. I looked at Vincent. He pulled out his tablet, opened a file, and slid it across the table to Everett. "Watch this," I said quietly. Everett looked down at the screen. The security footage from Riverside Station played in grainy black and white. Ilara at the coffee counter. The 2 cups. Her hand slipping into her purse. 3 seconds. Everett watched in silence, his face going pale. His hand resting on the table beside the tablet started to shake. When the video ended, he didn't move. He just stared at the screen, his breath coming shallow and fast. "Oh God," he whispered. "Oh my God." "I'm sorry, son," I said. "I know this is—" I didn't know. Everett looked up at me, his eyes red. "Dad, I swear to God I didn't know. I had no idea I know," I said. "I know you didn't. I've been watching the house, Everett. I've seen you. I know you're innocent." Everett put his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. I'd seen my son cry twice in his life. Once when he was 10 and his dog passed away. Once at Angela's funeral. This was the 3rd time. "She's my wife," he said, his voice breaking. "We've been married for 12 years. We have a life together. I thought we had a home." I reached across the table and put my hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry, son. I know how hard this is, but I need your help now. Will you help me prove what she's done?" Everett looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. "What do you need me to do?" I glanced at Vincent, then back at Everett. I need you to go back to that house," I said. "I need you to act like nothing's changed. Don't let Ilara know that you know. Don't let her see that anything's different. And then you help me finish this." Everett wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. How? I leaned forward. Ilara thinks the house is haunted. She thinks I'm haunting her. And she's not wrong. Vincent and I have been controlling the smart home systems remotely. But now with you inside the house, we can do more. We can push her harder. We can make her desperate enough to make mistakes. Everett was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What kind of mistakes?" "The kind that will give us the evidence we need to put her away for a very long time." Everett looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. I saw the boy I'd raised in his eyes, the man he'd become, and the pain of betrayal carved deep into his expression. Then slowly he nodded. "What do you need me to do?" And just like that, I had an ally inside the house. The ghost now had a living hand. 4 weeks and 2 days after I went missing, Ilara made her boldest move yet. She filed a life insurance claim. $2,500,000. Vincent intercepted the paperwork before it entered the insurance company's database, and what we found completed the final piece of the puzzle. I had been expecting it. The moment Vincent told me about Ilara's phone call weeks earlier, asking the insurance company about procedures when an insured person went missing, I knew this day would come. Still knowing it would happen and watching it unfold were two very different things. Seeing her actually submit the claim felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. "She's at Patricia Vaughn's office right now." Vincent set his laptop open on the cabin table. Morning sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the parking lot camera feed on the screen. Ilara stepped out of her car, dressed entirely in black, appropriate attire for a grieving daughter-in-law. Even through the grainy footage, I could see the tension in her posture, the quick way she adjusted her purse strap. She wasn't grieving. She was waiting to collect. "Garrett's with her," Vincent added. Of course he was. Garrett Sullivan, a state attorney and Ilara's co-conspirator, would never miss the chance to oversee this moment. I leaned closer, watching them walk toward the building. "Patricia's solid," Vincent said. "We went to college together. She agreed to keep me informed unofficially. Patricia Vaughn had spent 30 years in the insurance industry. If anyone could sense a fraudulent claim, it was her." The scene inside Patricia's office unfolded through the audio feed. Vincent had given her a small recorder concealed in her jacket lapel. Ilara's voice came through carefully controlled, measured to sound both sorrowful and composed. "Mrs. Vaughn, thank you for seeing us on such short notice," Ilara said. "Ambrose has been missing for over 4 weeks. The police have found nothing. I need closure." Patricia responded calmly. "Mrs. Winthrop, I understand. But legally, a declaration of death typically requires 7 years, without a body or definitive proof. There are exceptions," Garrett interjected smoothly, "when circumstances strongly suggest the person could not have survived." Mr. Winthrop boarded a train while experiencing a serious medical episode. He never arrived. No hospital has records of treating him. Detective Beckett's investigation has yielded nothing. I listened as Garrett laid out his argument with precision, using absence itself as proof of my death. The irony wasn't lost on me. Patricia remained cautious. "I'll need to file a preliminary report with our investigations unit. This isn't something that can be rushed." "I'm not asking you to rush," Ilara said quickly. "I just need access to the funds to continue searching, to hire private investigators." She let the implication linger. After they left, Patricia called Vincent immediately. "Something's wrong," she said. "She's far too eager." And Sullivan, he knew every loophole before I finished speaking. "Can you delay the claim?" Vincent asked. "I can initiate an investigation, but I can't deny it outright." "Not with the framework," he presented. "Send me everything she submitted." "Already done." 10 minutes later, the documents appeared in Vincent's encrypted inbox. I watched him open them page by page. Standard claim forms, Ilara's signatures, selected medical records suggesting declining health. Then we reached the financial disclosures. Ilara's outstanding debts totaled $265,000. I stared at the number. Vincent cross-referenced the sources. Maxed out credit cards. personal loans from obscure lenders, high-interest institutions, and buried deep in the paperwork references to private lending arrangements. That's underground money, Vincent said quietly. The kind that doesn't wait patiently for repayment. Ilara wasn't just greedy, she was desperate. Then came the final revelation. The beneficiary designations. Everett was listed as primary beneficiary. But under secondary beneficiaries allocated 30% was Garrett Sullivan. 30% of $2.5 million. $750,000. We sat in silence, absorbing it. She planned to split it, Vincent said. Ilara keeps $1.75 million. Garrett takes $750,000. She clears her debts and disappears. He walks away, wealthy. I leaned back, the weight settling over me. For weeks we'd worked with theories and surveillance. This was different. This was motive, documented and signed. We have enough now, Vincent said. Coffee tampering footage, insurance inquiries, a claim filed early, financial motive. We can go to Beckett immediately. I wanted to watch Ilara's lies unravel. But I shook my head. Not yet, Vincent frowned. Why not? Because we don't have her confession, I said. A good defense attorney will argue grief coincidence, unclear footage. Garrett's percentage could be framed as legal compensation. Juries believe weak stories. Vincent hesitated. So what do you want? I want her to admit it, I said. I want her to know she's caught. I want her words. He studied me, then nodded slowly. So what's the plan? I looked at Ilara's signature on the form. $2.5 million. That was my worth to her. We let her think she's won, I said. We let the claim proceed just enough. We make her believe she's about to be very rich. I paused, and then I come back from the dead. The night before I stepped back into my own life, I gave Ilara one final gift. No flickering lights, no footsteps in empty hallways, no whispers drifting through vents. This time I gave her the one thing she could not outrun, her own words. 5 weeks had passed since I vanished. Long enough for routine to return. Long enough for Detective Beckett's investigation to slow. Long enough for Ilara to believe the worst had already happened, and that she had survived it. The house had been quiet for 3 days. No roses, no strange sounds, no unexplained glitches. I had allowed that silence on purpose. Fear grows strongest when it appears to fade. She's starting to relax, Vincent murmured, watching the live feed from the master bedroom. The master bedroom, mine. The one Angela and I had shared for 30 years. The one where sunlight used to pool on her side of the bed in the mornings. Now Ilara slept there, Garrett beside her. That detail still stung more than I liked to admit. Are you sure about this? Vincent asked, fingers hovering above the keyboard. Once we do it this way, she'll know the system's compromised. She might try to run. She won't, I said quietly. The insurance claim is moving. She's too close to the payout. And where would she go? We have the recordings, the transaction trail, the pharmacy footage. She's trapped. Vincent studied me for a moment, then nodded. The cabin around us was dark, except for the glow of 3 monitors, each displaying a different camera feed from my house. Living room, kitchen, bedroom. At exactly 11 p.m., Vincent pressed enter. The television mounted across from the bed flickered to life. Ilara stirred first. She reached for the remote instinctively, then froze. White letters filled the screen. I know the truth. Garrett groaned beside her, rolling onto his back. What is that? Ilara didn't answer. She stared. Garrett grabbed the remote and pressed power. The screen went black. 5 seconds of silence. Then it turned back on. Same message. That's not possible, Garrett muttered, pressing the button again. Nothing changed. It's him, Ilara whispered. Don't start, Garrett snapped. Don't. She cut him off sharply. Don't say it. Vincent glanced at me. I nodded. The screen went dark once more. Silence. Then the speakers came alive. Ilara's voice filled the room. We need to make sure he doesn't survive the train ride. Once the medication kicks in, Garrett's voice followed. What about cameras? There won't be. I checked. He'll disappear. By the time anyone notices, we'll be free. Ilara lurched out of bed. No, she gasped. No, no. The recording continued clear and merciless. Every calculation, every contingency, every cold sentence spoken in this house while they believed I was already gone. Turn it off, she screamed. Garrett ripped the power cord from the wall. The television went dark. For half a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then every smart speaker in the house activated simultaneously. This time it was my voice. Calm, controlled. Ilara. She froze at the sound. You can't escape what you've done. Garrett backed toward the door. The coffee, my voice continued. The plan, the insurance, the debts. Garrett. Ilara bolted from the bedroom. Garrett followed, panic now fully visible in his posture. The hallway camera caught them stumbling down the stairs. My voice followed. You thought I was gone. You thought you'd won. They reached the living room. Ilara collapsed onto the couch, shaking violently. Garrett looked around, as if searching for a physical source. Something he could fight. Some people, my voice said softly, don't stay buried. Ilara covered her ears, rocking slightly. We have to leave, Garrett said urgently. Tonight. Pack a bag. We'll drive. Where she whispered. He's everywhere. He's not here, Garrett shouted. This is someone hacking the system. Maybe Everett. No. Ilara said, her voice suddenly certain in a way that chilled even me. It's him. At the cabin, I leaned back in my chair. Vincent remained still. Is this what you needed? He asked quietly. I watched Ilara unravel on the screen. For weeks I had layered uncertainty. White roses, whispers, messages, each one small on its own. Together, crushing. Yes, I said after a moment. But beneath that answer, something else stirred. Not regret. Not mercy. Fatigue. I was 72 years old. I had buried my wife. I had almost died on a train floor because the woman I trusted had decided I was worth more as a policy payout than as a living man. And tomorrow I would stand in front of her again, flesh and blood. Vincent muted the audio feed. The house on the screen still glowed with every light turned on. Ilara sat trembling. Garrett paced. The haunting had ended. What came next would not be psychological. Tomorrow, Vincent said. Yes, tomorrow there would be no speakers, no distortions, no technological illusions. Tomorrow Ambrose Winthrop would walk through that door. I picked up my phone and sent a single message. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., be there. It took less than 10 seconds for Everett to reply. I'll be there, Dad. I stared at those words longer than I expected to. For weeks I had operated as a ghost, unseen, unheard, moving through wires and cameras. Tomorrow I would reclaim my name. I closed the laptop. The cabin fell into darkness. For the first time since the train station, silence felt different. Not heavy, not uncertain. Final. One more night, I murmured. Vincent didn't respond. Outside, wind moved through the pine trees. Inside, I lay back on the narrow cabin bed and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, the ghost would step into the light. Tomorrow, Ilara and Garrett would face consequences not whispered through speakers, but spoken directly with evidence in hand. Tomorrow, there would be no more shadows. Ambrose Winthrop would come home, and nothing, absolutely nothing, would ever be the same again. Before I tell you what happened, the moment I walked back through that door, I want to hear from you. When Ilara sees me standing there alive, what do you think she'll do? Will she collapse under the weight of it all, or will she try one last lie? Comment 1 if you think she breaks down. Comment 2 if you think she fights back. Or write still here so I know you're walking this road with me. And one quick note, parts of what follows are shaped for storytelling and reflection. If that's not for you, this is your moment to step away. I walked through the front door at exactly 10 o'clock in the morning, 5 weeks after Ilara thought she'd gotten rid of me for good. The look on her face, pure, absolute terror, was worth every sleepless night in that cabin. The last time I'd stood in this house, I was getting ready to board a train to visit my sister. I'd kissed my daughter-in-law on the cheek. I'd accepted the coffee she'd handed me with a smile. I'd trusted her. That was 5 weeks ago. That was a different Ambrose Winthrop. The man who walked through the door today knew exactly what Ilara was capable of. And I'd brought receipts. Ilara was sitting on the living room couch when I entered, a coffee mug trembling in her hands. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed, skin pale as paper. The haunting had done its work. She hadn't slept properly in days, maybe weeks. Garrett sat beside her, his hand on her knee, in what was probably meant to be a comforting gesture. He looked better than she did, but not by much. His suit was rumpled, his tie loose. They both looked like people who'd been living in fear. Good. I didn't say anything at first. I just closed the door behind me with a quiet click that seemed to echo through the house. The sound made Ilara's head snap toward me. Our eyes met. The coffee mug slipped from her fingers and shattered on the hardwood floor, sending coffee and ceramic shards across the room. Neither of us moved to clean it up. You're gone," Ilara whispered, her voice so faint I almost didn't hear it. "You're supposed to be gone." I walked further into the room, my footsteps measured and deliberate. I was wearing my gray suit, the same one I'd worn to Angela's funeral 4 years ago. Professional, respectable, the kind of outfit you wear when you're about to deliver a verdict. "I'm very much alive, Ilara," I said calmly. "No thanks to you." Garrett stood up quickly, positioning himself slightly in front of Ilara, protecting her. The irony wasn't lost on me. He was trying to shield her from the man they'd both tried to eliminate, Mr. Winthrop. Garrett said, his lawyer voice kicking in despite the shock on his face. "We thought everyone thought you were missing. Where have you been? The police have been searching. Have they?" I interrupted, setting my leather briefcase down on the coffee table. The sound of it hitting the wood made both of them flinch. "That's interesting, because I haven't seen much evidence of an active search. What I have seen is Ilara filing an insurance claim. $2.5 million. That's quite a lot of money to collect on someone who's only been missing 5 weeks, isn't it?" Ilara's face went even whiter, if that was possible. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. "How did you—" Garrett started, then stopped himself. Too late. The question alone was an admission that the insurance claim existed. How did I know? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Let's just say I've been keeping an eye on things." That's when Everett walked out from the kitchen, a coffee mug in his hand. He'd been waiting there just as we'd planned. His presence was the final piece, the betrayal Ilara wouldn't see coming. Ilara's eyes went wide when she saw her husband. "Everett," she breathed, reaching out toward him. "Thank God you're here. Your father, I don't understand what's happening. I know what you did, Ilara." Everett said, his voice flat and cold, in a way I'd never heard before. He stayed where he was, didn't move closer to her. "Dad told me everything." Ilara looked back and forth between us, her breathing getting faster, more panicked. "Told you? What did he tell you?" "Everett, baby, your father has been through something traumatic. He's not thinking clearly." "Don't," Everett cut her off. "Don't lie to me anymore. I've seen the evidence. I know what you tried to do." Ilara's composure finally cracked completely. She sank back onto the couch, her hands covering her face. Her shoulders shook. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I can explain," she said, her voice muffled by her hands. "I was desperate. We were so far in debt, and I didn't mean I never wanted to actually what?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Eliminate me? Collect my life insurance? Steal everything I spent my life building?" Garrett stepped forward, and I could see him shifting into lawyer mode, trying to salvage whatever he could. "Ambrose, you don't have any proof of any of this. Whatever you think happened." "Actually, Mr. Sullivan," I said, reaching for my briefcase, "I have quite a lot of proof." I opened it slowly, deliberately. Inside were printed documents, USB drives, photographs, everything Vincent and I had gathered over the past 5 weeks. Every piece of evidence, every recorded conversation, every damning detail. I pulled out the first folder and placed it on the coffee table between us. The tab read, Riverside Station Security Footage. Should we start with the video from the train station? I asked, looking directly at Alara. On the one where you add something to my coffee. Or would you prefer to discuss the insurance claim first? The one where you list Garrett as a secondary beneficiary for 30% of the ITO payout $750,000 for his trouble. Garrett's face went pale. Alara's hands dropped from her face, and I could see the moment she realized just how much I knew. Just how completely her plan had unraveled. Or maybe... I continued pulling out another folder. We should talk about the phone records. The ones showing you and Garrett have been in daily contact for the past 6 months. Long before I supposedly went missing. Or the recordings of your conversations, the ones where you discuss how to make sure I didn't survive the train ride. I pulled out a third folder, this one thicker than the others. There's also your financial records. $265,000 in debt. Loans from some very questionable sources. The kind of people who don't just send collection letters when you can't pay. Alara was crying now, her whole body shaking. Garrett had gone very still, his face expressionless. He was calculating, I could tell, trying to figure out if there was any legal angle he could work any way to discredit what I had. There wasn't. Where did you get all this? Garrett asked quietly. This kind of surveillance phone records security footage that's not legal without a warrant. You're right, I said. Which is why I'm not going to the police with it. Not yet, anyway. Both of them looked up at that hope flickering in their eyes. That's what I'd been waiting for. I'm not going to the police. I repeated, because I want something else first. I want to hear you say it, Alara. I want you to admit what you did. Every detail. Every calculation. Every moment you spent planning how to get rid of me. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table. And then we're going to have a conversation about what happens next. Because here's the thing, I've been gone for 5 weeks. Legally, I can stay gone. I can disappear again, and this time it'll be my choice. The insurance claim will be denied. The investigation will go nowhere. And you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if I'm watching, if I'm listening, if I'm going to show up again when you least expect it. I picked up one of the USB drives and held it up. Or, I said slowly, you can tell me the truth, all of it, right now. And maybe we can find a way forward that doesn't end with both of you in prison. The room fell silent except for Alara's quiet sobbing and the sound of morning traffic outside. Everett stood motionless by the kitchen door, his face unreadable. Garrett's jaw was clenched so tight, I could see the muscle jumping. I placed the USB drive back on the table and sat down in the armchair across from them, crossing my legs. Professional, patient. Sugin, I said. Who wants to start? I laid the evidence out slowly, deliberately, one piece at a time, watching Alara's composure disintegrate with each new detail. This wasn't about revenge. Not anymore. This was about clarity, about stripping every excuse away until only truth remained. It was 10:15 a.m. Detective Lauren Beckett would be at the front door in exactly 15 minutes. Vincent had ensured that. 20 minutes earlier, he had placed an anonymous call reporting that Ambrose Winthrop, long missing, had just been seen entering his own residence. Lauren Beckett was not the kind of detective who ignored anomalies. She would come. The coffee table between us resembled an evidence board torn from a courtroom drama, stacks of printed call logs, highlighted financial statements, USB drives, time-stamped photographs. Alara and Garrett sat rigidly on the couch opposite me, no longer comfortable conspirators, but something else entirely. Defendants. Let's begin with the timeline, I said, pulling a sheet forward. It was a spreadsheet of dates and durations. 6 months ago, Ilara, your communication pattern with Garrett shifted dramatically, from occasional contact to daily calls. Some days, multiple calls. I slid 3 pages of phone records toward them, yellow highlights streaking across the columns. At first, I considered the possibility of an affair. I continued evenly. That would have been the simpler explanation. Ilara flinched. But then I noticed something more interesting. I tapped a cluster of dates. These calls coincide precisely with your inquiries into my life insurance policy. 3 calls to the insurance company in 1 week. Questions about payout timelines. Questions about what happens when a policyholder goes missing. Ilara's hands trembled violently in her lap. I was organizing things, she whispered, making sure. Were you? I interrupted gently. I withdrew another document and laid it flat. This is your credit report from 4 months ago. $265,000 in outstanding debt. Credit cards maxed. High-interest personal loans. And here I pressed my finger against a line, a private lender known for aggressive collection practices. Garrett shifted in his seat. Financial hardship does not equal intent, he said, though his voice lacked its earlier authority. It establishes motive, I replied. Desperation narrows morality. I turned toward the laptop and opened a new file. Now let's examine the morning of my disappearance. A traffic camera feed appeared on screen. Ilara's vehicle pulling into a pharmacy parking lot 30 minutes before she met me at Riverside Station. The timestamp glowed in the lower corner. She entered the building. 8 minutes later, she exited carrying a small paper bag. Vincent contacted the pharmacy, I said calmly. You purchased motion sickness medication, a potent formulation. Garrett leaned forward. That proves nothing. Except that the medication was never used, I said. The pills remain untouched in the bottle found in your bathroom cabinet. Ilara's breathing grew uneven. What you requested behind the counter, I continued, was the liquid compound version. Faster absorption, easier to conceal. Garrett's jaw tightened. I reached for another folder. 3 months ago, Mr. Sullivan, you opened a separate savings account. Joint access with Ilara. Small incremental deposits kept deliberately below reporting thresholds. I met his gaze. A preparation fund. $750,000 divided gradually would avoid immediate scrutiny. That account is legitimate, Garrett insisted. With my daughter-in-law as co-holder, I asked softly. Explain the business model. Silence. Then I lifted the small digital recorder from the table. This may interest you most. Garrett's eyes flickered. 2 years ago, I installed a comprehensive smart home system. You assisted with its design. His face went still. Vincent reactivated archived pathways. I pressed play. Ilara's voice filled the room. We need to make sure he doesn't survive the train ride. Once the medication kicks in, he'll just disappear. No body means no immediate investigation. Garrett's voice followed. And the insurance. We wait 4 weeks. Long enough to avoid suspicion. I stopped the recording. I have 17 additional files, I said quietly. Hours of planning. Contingencies. Risk assessments. Garrett swallowed. That's illegal surveillance. None of it is admissible. Perhaps, I said. But admissibility is only one component of truth. I lifted the insurance claim itself. $2.5 million. Ilara as primary beneficiary. Garrett Sullivan as secondary 30%. I let the math hang in the air. $750,000. Ilara broke then. Full sobs deep, gasping uncontrolled. I didn't have a choice, she cried. They were threatening me. I was drowning. Garrett said. Ilara. Garrett snapped, grabbing her arm. She jerked free. No, I can't do this anymore, she screamed. I was scared. I thought if he just disappeared, I could fix everything. Pay them off. Start over. Her words tumbled out without structure. You didn't think I would survive, I said quietly. She looked at me, eyes swollen and red. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. There was a knock at the door. Precise. Measured. Everett moved toward it, pale but steady. I did not break eye contact with Ilara. The door opened. Mr. Winthrop, a familiar voice called. I turned. Detective Lauren Beckett stood framed in the doorway, two uniformed officers behind her. Surprise flickered openly across her face. "You're alive," she said. "I am," I replied. She stepped inside slowly, gaze sweeping the room, the shattered mug, the documents, the recorder. "What's going on here?" she asked. I gestured to the coffee table. "A great deal." Her eyes landed on Ilara still shaking on the couch, then on Garrett rigid and silent. Lauren stepped closer to the table. "May I, please?" She picked up the first folder, flipped it open, scanned the highlighted call logs, moved to the pharmacy footage, the insurance documentation. She did not rush. She absorbed. "What is this?" she asked quietly. "A pattern," I said, "and a confession." Ilara let out a strangled sob. Lauren's gaze sharpened. "Confession." Ilara's shoulders shook. I didn't mean she began, but her voice broke. Lauren looked at Garrett. "Mr. Sullivan." He said nothing. Lauren closed the folder slowly. "Mrs. Winthrop," she said evenly, "I need you to stand up." Ilara stared at her. "Now." Garrett rose abruptly. "Detective, my client." "We'll have representation," Lauren said calmly, "at the station." The officers stepped forward. Everett stood frozen near the doorway. I remained seated. Lauren turned back to me. "Mr. Winthrop," she said carefully, "we need to discuss your disappearance." "Of course," I replied. She studied me for a long moment. "You understand," she said, "that staging your own disappearance complicates matters." "I do." Her gaze flicked once more to the evidence on the table. "But this," she said quietly, "complicates them far more." She nodded to the officers. Ilara was lifted gently from the couch. Garrett's face had drained of color. The house felt different now. Not haunted, not tense, just exposed. Lauren met my eyes one final time before stepping outside. "Mr. Winthrop," she said, "will be in touch." The door closed behind her. Silence settled into the room. 5 weeks ago, I had walked out of this house as a trusting man. Now I stood within it as something else entirely. Not vengeful, not triumphant, just finished. The truth once uncovered has a weight to it. And finally, it had landed. They cuffed Ilara first, then Garrett. I stood in the doorway watching them led toward separate police cars, and I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, only a deep exhaustion that settled into my bones. Ilara was still crying as Detective Beckett read her rights. The words were calm and practiced, delivered with the precision of someone who had said them hundreds of times before. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Ilara wasn't silent. She turned toward the house, toward Everett. Desperation cracking her voice. "Please, Everett. I'm your wife. Tell them this is a mistake." Everett stood beside me, pale and rigid. He didn't answer. For several long seconds, he simply stared at her. The woman he had married, the woman he had trusted, the woman who had tried to erase his father for insurance money. Then he turned away. That was when Ilara finally understood. It wasn't just over between her and me. It was over between her and Everett. Every calculation she had made, every lie she had told, had destroyed her entire life. Garrett said nothing as officers led him to the second patrol car. His eyes stayed fixed on the ground. The confident attorney from an hour earlier was gone, replaced by a man who knew exactly how badly he had lost. Neighbors watched from behind their windows. Curtains shifted. Faces pressed against glass. By morning, all of Riverside would know the story. Ambrose Winthrop, missing for 5 weeks, had returned, and his daughter-in-law had tried to make sure he never did. When the patrol cars pulled away, lights flashing without sirens, Detective Beckett came back inside. Her expression was professional, but there was something else there too, curiosity, perhaps respect. "Mr. Winthrop," she said, opening her notebook, "I need your official statement. Everything from the beginning." Vincent arrived carrying additional backup drives. Everett sat on the couch where Ilara had been an hour earlier. I told Beckett everything. The coffee, the numbness, Dr. Julia Bennett saving my life, the decision to disappear. 5 weeks of surveillance and evidence. She listened carefully, asking questions, writing steadily. When I finished, she set her pen down. "This is unprecedented," she said. "Some of the evidence you gathered may not be admissible. Home recordings without warrants could raise privacy issues." My stomach tightened. "So they might walk free." "No," she said firmly. "The core evidence is strong. The pharmacy footage came from a public traffic camera. The train station footage is official security video. The insurance claim is public record. And most importantly, we have Alara's confession witnessed and recorded on my body camera." She leaned forward. "What you did gave us probable cause. Now we can proceed legally. Warrants, subpoenas, bank records. You built the map. We'll follow it properly." Vincent asked about charges. "Attempted homicide and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud," Beckett replied. "Mr. Sullivan will also face charges for criminal conspiracy as an attorney." "How long?" I asked quietly. "If convicted, Alara faces 10 to 15 years. Sullivan 8 to 12. The numbers settled heavily in the room. Alara was 32. She would be nearly 50 when she got out. I felt no joy, only exhaustion. We went to the station afterward. My attorney, Frank Richardson, met us there stunned. "Ambrose," he said, gripping my hand. "I can't believe this. Help me handle what comes next," I said. "Of course. We'll need a criminal specialist for your testimony. And Everett's divorce proceedings will need immediate attention." Everett nodded silently. At the station, I gave my formal statement. Signed documents. Submitted evidence. Beckett confirmed Alara and Garrett would be held without bail due to flight risk and premeditation. It was nearly 5 when we stepped outside. The sunlight felt harsh after the fluorescent interior. Everett walked beside me, silent. Finally, he spoke. "What now, Dad?" I studied him. He had lost his wife today, not to death, but to betrayal. "Now," I said, "we rebuild what's left." "I'm filing for divorce tomorrow," he said. "Frank's preparing everything." "I know. I can't stay in that house." "Stay with me," I said. "It's big enough, and I could use the company." He hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." Vincent pulled up with the car. As we got in, I looked back at the station. Inside, Alara and Garrett were being processed, fingerprinted, photographed. Their new reality had begun. This wasn't the end. There would be trials and appeals, months, maybe years of legal battles. But the truth was out. Justice was moving, and I was alive to see it. 6 months later, I was kneeling in Angela's garden, planting white roses under the April sun. The house felt like home again, not the old home, but home nonetheless. My knees protested as I dug into the soil. 72 years old, and I felt every one of them. But here, with dirt under my fingernails and sun warming my back, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. "Dad, you need help with that?" Everett stood at the porch steps, coffee mug in hand. He'd been living with me since the arrest 6 months now. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago. "Could use another set of hands," I said. He knelt beside me and we worked in comfortable silence. The way we used to when he was young and I'd teach him about gardening. Those were good memories. Simple ones. "Mom would have loved these," Everett said, touching a white petal. "Your mother loved all flowers. But white roses were special. She used to say they meant new beginnings." "Is that what this is, a fresh start?" "I think so. We're still here, still standing. That counts for something." He smiled slightly. "I'm opening that consulting firm next month. Finally signed the lease. You'll be excellent at it." We finished planting and stood back. The garden was coming back to life slowly but surely. My mind drifted to 3 months ago. The courtroom. I hadn't wanted to go, but I needed to see it through. Needed to watch justice actually happen. The courtroom had been packed. Media covering what they called the ghost's revenge, a sensational headline that completely missed the point. This wasn't about revenge. Alara had looked smaller in her orange jumpsuit, thinner. When the judge read the verdict, guilty on all counts, she'd started crying. quiet at first, then louder. 12 years. Attempted harm conspiracy to commit fraud, insurance fraud. 12 years in federal prison. Garrett Sullivan got 10 years. His law license was revoked. His career, like Alara's life, was effectively over. When Alara was let out, she'd looked at Everett one last time. She'd mouthed something, maybe, "I'm sorry." It didn't matter. Everett hadn't looked back. His hand had found mine, then gripping tight, and we'd sat there together until the courtroom emptied. That evening, Vincent came over for dinner. It had become a weekly tradition, the three of us gathering around the dining table, the same table where Angela used to sit. How's the business?" Vincent asked Everett. "I'm growing. I've got 3 clients already." "Word of mouth is the best advertising," Vincent said. We ate and talked about mundane things, business plans, the weather, Vincent's latest project. Normal conversations, the kind of evening that felt precious now. After dessert, Everett asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Dad, do you regret it?" "Everything you did, the haunting, the surveillance, all of it." I set down my coffee cup and thought about it. Really thought about it. "I regret that it had to happen," I said. "I regret that someone I trusted was capable of that. I regret that your marriage ended the way it did." I looked at my son. "But do I regret fighting back? No. Sometimes standing up for the truth is all we have." Everett nodded slowly. "She wrote me a letter last month. From prison. I hadn't known that." "Did you read it?" "Yeah. She said she was sorry, that she was desperate and made terrible choices. She asked if I'd forgive her someday. Will you?" "I don't know. Maybe, but not today. Not for a long time." "That's fair. Forgiveness isn't something you can rush." Vincent raised his coffee cup. "To moving forward, whatever that looks like." We clinked our cups together. After Vincent left, I sat alone on the porch in Angela's old chair. The white roses we'd planted swayed in the evening breeze, their fragrance drifting across the yard. I closed my eyes and whispered into the gathering darkness. "I'm still here, sweetheart. Still fighting. Still living." And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt at peace. Not happiness. Peace and happiness aren't always the same thing. Angela's death had taken happiness from me 4 years ago. Ilara's betrayal had taken my sense of safety 6 months ago. But peace was something I could build again. The roses would bloom by June. Everett's business would open in May. Life would continue scarred, but steady. Justice wasn't revenge. It was standing up for truth even when it cost everything. It was choosing to live when someone wanted you gone. It was planting white roses in April and believing they would bloom. The evening air was cool. Inside, I could hear Everett washing dishes, humming something under his breath. A normal sound. A living sound. I smiled into the darkness and stood up. There was still work to do, gardens to tend, a son to support, a life to rebuild. But tonight, on this porch, in this moment, I was exactly where I needed to be. Home. And to you who stayed until the very end of this family story, I want to leave you with something honest. I never set out to become the man who vanished for 5 weeks and watched his own home through a laptop screen like a restless ghost. That was never the legacy I imagined for myself. It's not the kind of story a grandfather hopes to pass down one day. But sometimes life corners you. Sometimes it forces a choice. Do you lie down and let the darkness swallow you, or do you stand up and fight for the truth? I chose to stand. Looking back, I can admit this without pride. I made mistakes. When Alara handed me that coffee at the train station, I accepted it without hesitation. I trusted her completely. Maybe God was testing my discernment. Maybe he was reminding me that blind trust without wisdom can become its own form of foolishness. Either way, the lesson was painful. Not everyone who smiles at you carries loyalty in their heart. Some smiles hide calculation. Some kindness hides intent. People might call what I did, Dad, revenge. They might place it alongside dramatic grandpa stories where the older man outsmarts everyone in the end. But this was never about rage. It wasn't about destroying someone for the sake of pride. It wasn't about humiliation. This family story was about exposure. It was about patience. It was about making sure the truth came into the light, no matter how long it took or how uncomfortable it became. There is a difference between anger and resolve. Anger is loud. Resolve is quiet. Anger lashes out. Resolve waits, observes, gathers proof, and moves carefully. If this belongs anywhere in the world of grandpa stories, then let it be one defined by clarity and restraint, not bitterness. If I could offer you one piece of hard-earned advice, it would be this: don't wait for disaster before you start paying attention. Don't ignore the subtle warnings just to preserve temporary peace. When something feels wrong, pause. Listen. That inner voice, whether you call it intuition, experience, or faith, exists for a reason. I ignored too many signs because I wanted harmony more than I wanted truth. That was my failure. Another truth I've learned from this family story is that forgiveness and restoration are not the same thing. Forgiveness may come in time. Perhaps Everett will find it within himself one day. Perhaps he won't. That is his journey. But even if forgiveness arrives, some structures cannot be rebuilt exactly as they were. Betrayal alters foundations. It shifts relationships permanently. That is the true cost. No amount of justice brings back what was lost. My actions did not bring Angela back. They did not erase the moment on that train when my fingers went numb and I believed my life was ending. They did not undo the fear, the isolation, or the 5 weeks spent hiding. But they gave me something: steady closure. The knowledge that I refused to disappear quietly, that I did not step willingly into the darkness someone else prepared for me. In many grandpa stories, older men are portrayed as outdated or fragile. I reject that narrative. Age is not weakness. Experience is not irrelevance. Wisdom sharpened by hardship can still stand strong. What matters is not how old you are, but whether you are willing to confront truth when it demands courage. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you of a moment when trust was broken, I invite you to share your thoughts. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone close to you? How did you respond? Did you walk away? Did you fight back? Did you forgive? Conversations like these transform private pain into shared understanding. If what you heard resonated with you, consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who may need to reflect on it. Even intense grandpa stories carry lessons about boundaries, discernment, and resilience. Stories, when told, honestly become reminders that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it waits. And I want to be clear, certain elements of what I share are shaped for storytelling and reflection. Some details may be structured to bring clarity to deeper lessons. If this style of storytelling isn't for you, I respect that completely. There are many voices in the world, and I hope you find the one that speaks best to you. But if you are still here, still listening, thank you. Thank you for walking through this journey with me from beginning to end. It was not easy to live through. It was not easy to retell. Yet sometimes the hardest experiences carry the most necessary truths. As I sit here now, watching white roses bloom again in the garden, I'm reminded of something simple: survival alone is not victory. Integrity is. Standing for truth, even when it costs you comfort, is. So stay vigilant. Trust wisely. Act with courage when silence would be easier. Faith without action changes nothing. Strength without wisdom destroys. This is Ambrose Winthrop, signing off.